I had been asked to introduce myself by the organizer, and I advised them that wasn't very wise. However, they didn't listen. And I thought, for a change, let me compliant and listen to what I've been told. My name is Dr. Nairouz Bader, Envision Partnership CEO. I used to be a drug dealer, now I'm a headhunter, so I'll leave it to your imagination. I didn't get the right response. So you're okay with me being a drug dealer?
Drug dealer. Can't hear it.
So my first chapter in life has been pharma, and then while I was doing my postgraduate studies, I fell in love with the leadership topic. And I always say I found people much more interesting than molecules, and this has been the journey. With Envision Partnership, our mission has been to put more female on boards and C-suite. And we're very proud to say that by 2019, 50% of our placements have been female. And we're looking to keep on pushing the thank you. It's an honor to welcome each one of you to our important session today, Women Empowerment. In an era of progress and inclusivity, organizations play a pivotal role in championing diversity, particularly in empowering women in the workplace. Recognizing the transformative impact of gender equality, organizations worldwide are prioritizing initiatives that empower women and contribute to more equitable work environment. If women participated equally in the global economy, according to McKinsey, they could generate an additional GDP 28 trillion US dollars by 2025, an amount equivalent to the combined size of the Chinese and US economy. Imagine. In this discourse, we'll explore key strategies for advancing women's empowerment, creating workplace where everyone, regardless of gender, can contribute and flourish to collective success. Let's embrace rich discussions, forge connection, and collectively make a significant impact. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful esteemed panelists. We'll start with the great Pamela Lucia Peters, environmental economist, sustainability strategist, and women empowerment pillar at the Institute of Sustainable Planet. Will you kindly give us a glimpse about your background?
Well, thank you so much, and what an honor for me to be here. Just to affirm, I'm Pamela Peters. I'm an environmental economist and sustainability strategist with 25 years of international experience. As a young woman, I left Belgium, my country of birth, to the USA to create the very first television show. This was way back in 2001, where very few people were aware of the opportunities of the green and social economy. But as a female leader, I dared to jump into unknown territories with an open heart and an open mind. And when you embrace that, many new adventures start. I'm also a fellow of the Explorers Club. It's a global society of scientists, explorers who go to the moon, who go to the depth of the ocean to explore the unknown. Saudi is at the most exciting cornerstone of his existence. We're exploring the unknown, we're tapping into territories very few have dared to go. You are a bold nation. And farther from that TV show, I created a lot of other initiatives that empower women, that have empowered youth and men alike. I teach them how to become captains of their own life and leaders for the planet, and I am very honored to be here and to launch a unifying principle in a market that is not perfect. So the market failure that I try to correct is opposing mindsets, externalities, and undervaluation, and I look forward to share more later.
Thank you, and we're very happy to have you with us. Thank you to our host, Dr. Moody Al Khalaf, Senior Learning and Development Manager at Riyadh Air. We're very happy that you allowed us to be in your beautiful country.
Thank you.
And we'd love to hear from you a bit about your
Assalamu
background.
alaikum. Maud al-Khalaf. While I'm not a drug dealer, I am a leadership trafficker. I started my career in academia. I am a graduate of this prestigious university, Princess Noor University, where I taught for over 10 years. Thank you. After I earned my PhD, I went on into foreign diplomacy, where I was assistant cultural attaché at the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. for over 6 years, actually supervising or helping supervise the largest government-funded scholarship program, which produced many of the leaders that you see today. After which, I was appointed to the Saudi Shura Council in its 7th term. I came back to this university as advisor to the university president for 2 years and recently joined Relive Air to head their learning and development department.
And welcome from UAE, Taghreed Al Saeed, the guru of communication, executive director for Miral. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Thank you. Just an introduction, I'm the Executive Director of Group Communications and Destination Marketing in Miral, also a board member of Miral Destination and Miral Experience. For those who are not familiar with Miral, Miral is a government-owned company by Abu Dhabi. We are in the tourism, leisure, and entertainment sector. We manage the destinations of Yas Island and Saadiyat Island. We're also the developer and operator of key attractions like Ferrari World, Sea World, Warner Brothers, Yas Water Park, and we're currently developing the National History Museum, Team Lab Phenomena, which is an interactive art with Tokyo, and many, many other projects. I started my career I come from a different background. I'm also a member of WID. WID is a movement for early childhood development. I'm also a mentor of Techstars for entrepreneurs and also part of the advisory board of Strathclyde University alumni. I have just joined the Harvard Executive Program, and I will be starting in Boston this year. I'm also an MBA graduate with the master's degree in Visual Information Technology, BA in Computer Information System, also diploma in Digital Marketing and Journalism. I was born in Riyadh, and I left Riyadh when I was 14, but just coming back is really exciting, and it feels really, I'm speechless actually. The feelings is a bit mixed. But I was actually watching the football match yesterday between Al Hilal and Inter Miami, and what caught my attention is actually not Messi. What caught my attention was the referees were all females.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Taghreed. And it's my pleasure to introduce a dear friend that we've become friends over a common mission, which is female empowerment. Diana Wild, the co-founder of Aurora 50.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I actually came to the UAE in 2005. My family moved before that. And we will very soon be moving to Riyadh. So this is very exciting for me to be here and to be meeting so many of you today. As a background, I've really worked more with professional services and technology companies, servicing really the finance industry. And that led me into working in commodities and structuring multi-million-dollar deals before I realized that I didn't really feel I was making much of an impact in the world. Shortly after that, I co-founded an organization called Aurora 50. Aurora 50 is a diversity, equity, and inclusion impact agency, which I co-founded with Sheikh Hassan bin Sultan bin Khalifa Al Nahyan from Abu Dhabi. And it's very much our mission to really help companies and corporates to create thriving and inclusive workplaces. So this is something that is a subject that's very, very close to my heart, and I'm very, very pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we're very happy and honored to have you with us. I extend my sincere gratitude for welcoming us to this distinguished and historically significant landscape of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We are privileged to be in this transformative and rebirth setting. Thank you, Dr. Modi, for having us in your country. So the following question is to you. As we navigate through the diverse perspective and insights shared in inclusion and shedding lights on some of the key considerations for various regions, drawing from your own experience about the transformative landscape of Saudi Arabia, could you provide us insight into the current stage of gender diversity in the kingdom in the workplace?
I think in the realm of closing the gender gap in the workforce, we've done exceptionally well so far. So much that we've been recognized by the World Economic Forum in 2022 as one of the top 3 countries in advancing in closing the gender gap in the workforce. We've jumped, I believe, 12 ranks on the index in 2022. Why? Because as part of Vision 2030, as my colleague Thamer highlighted today, we aimed at 30% by 2030. We reached 37% by Q1 of 2023. The vision itself, the plan for the vision, has spurred so many initiatives and policies, from quota mandates to transportation facilitation to remote work support to flexible working hours, childcare support as well. All of these initiatives came together to accelerate that. I think we don't even need to mandate quotas in numbers now. Women are entering the workforce equally with men and excelling as they do. Having said that, I think there is still a challenge in the executive leadership and C-suite level women empowerment. To be fair, that is a worldwide challenge, especially in some sectors like the one I'm currently in, aviation or military. And the good news is, I think in Saudi Arabia in particular, it's a time issue. Women that entered the workforce 20 years ago have not had equal opportunity for management experience to be ministers or deputy ministers or CEOs or chairmen of boards as their male peers have. Women today and 5 years ago entering the workforce are in managerial positions currently and will be able to compete equally with their male peers in the future.
Thank you. Following on this, Diana, we turn our attention to UAE and Gulf countries, and we know that you support women on boards and women on boards progress within the GCC. We've noticed that, or you've mentioned earlier in one of your sessions, that the representation in the GCC is 7% versus 20% globally. So how would you approach fostering gender diversity and inclusion in these regions? Can you tell us more about your initiatives?
Sure. I'd just like to add a little bit to what Dr. Modi was saying as well, because I think we're seeing similar things happening really across the GCC. And certainly within the UAE, the transition's been incredibly fast as well. So if we just go back to 2020, which is when we were looking very much at the women on boards problem and sort of saying, what's going on here? Because we would speak to one stakeholder and they would say, it's a dry pipeline. There are no women that are interested in this. There isn't any sort of talent that we can tap into. And then, fortunately, my co-founder was very well connected to many, many senior women who were saying, no, of course I'd be interested. We realized pretty early on that there was this disconnect that was actually causing the problem. And by using design thinking, you can kind of flip the issue on its head, which is what we did. So it was a question of, how do you find female board directors if you are an all-male board? And that thinking really changed everything for us. And I think this is where that shift in mindset has really come across the Gulf as well. No longer are we saying, should we? We're saying, how do we? And this is, why we're seeing these wonderful initiatives and sponsorship for these initiatives, and it's making a drastic difference. So to put that into context in numbers, for women on boards in the UAE, we were at 3.5% in 2020, which is tiny. It was a whole 28 women on listed seats, and now that's over 11%, and this is after a quota was also put in place for one women on boards. And this will be the end of that 3-year window where the companies were to shift to achieve that. That trickle-down effect has happened as well, where people are now looking further into the pipeline. So not having enough women in executive leadership is now, of course, a concern for those boards as well. So when we look at the pipeline, what we do is we typically kind of look at it as a triangle. We say, okay, one half of the triangle is the men coming up, the executive leadership, and then the other half, let's look at how skewed that is. And this is what's really exciting about the region, because actually the STEM subjects mean that we have a lot of young talent coming in. So to your point of that sort of lag effect, we need to make sure that we don't have what you would call a leaky pipeline. And this is really where it's become really important for us to put those kind of initiatives in place. Now, when you look at what initiatives kind of exist within the corporates, normally what we would see is things like women's councils, employee resourcing groups, women's leadership training, these type of things. But not everything can be fixed just by looking internally. And they're the kind of initiatives that Aurora 50 has kind of come to the table to support. So with the boards, it was about bridging the network gap. How do we help women in one company start meeting board directors in another? And so we launched an initiative called Pathway 20. The KPI in UAE is for 20%. And that then helped us to increase the number of women going into those boardrooms and seeing the number of women on listed boards increase. We're doing the same now with a corporate women's network, effectively. So by taking the very best leaders from the most influential and largest companies and making sure that they are really well connected, and with providing them with the acceleration tools that they need to achieve these leadership roles, it means they get a win-win at a time in their life where it's really time sensitive, because you often already have a family and commitments, and it's quite difficult. So for us, it's about having that community approach. And that's really what's making a big difference, is that companies are coming together and we're seeing those cross sectors coming together to actually fix what's happening.
Thank you. Transitioning to our next theme, exploring the significance of gender-neutral policies in creating inclusive environment. Taghreed, would you be able to give us some examples about effective gender-neutral policies organizations can implement?
Before talking about organizations specifically, I would like to address the need of the ecosystem of policies, starting from the government role to society, then organization. Just giving examples. From government role, for example, the UAE Securities and Commodities Authority, they have mandated public listed company to have at least one member in the board. From a society, there's the Emirati Women Union. They have initiated something like the Emirati Women's Day, shedding the light on successful stories and role models. So this is the role of the media to highlight these stories, to start shifting the mindset in society. Then going to the organization level. I will give examples of what Miral have done in order to empower women. There is the great work, the Great Place to Work, which is a global organization where it can survey employees' satisfaction, including women. There is the parent label guidelines to make sure that women, especially with kids between 0 to 8, they have a very children-friendly environment where they can, to encourage them to come to the workforce. There is the flexi hour policy. There is the remote working policy. Also the equal salary packages for both gender is critical. Actually, from the government level, they have mandated that. And also from an organization level, they are obliged to follow that. So even recruitment, equal opportunity of recruitment, we don't recruit by gender, we recruit by qualification. And this is where the change and the women empowerment.
Thank you. Pamela, we'd like to ask you to share your insights on the often neglected intersection on diversity, equity, and inclusion with sustainability practices. What are some of the key sustainability actions and initiatives and around women empowerment that you supported and that we can learn from it here at the GCC?
Well, thank you very much for this question. As I mentioned, I was very daring to basically leave with 2 suitcases to the US, one-way ticket. And as you are bold in your vision, the automatic law of the universe is good things come to you if you want to do good. And so in taking that step in creating the TV show, I was then approached to launch the Manhattan chapter and run the club of the BPW organization, which is an international business club for women. There are 100,000 members worldwide. And so being European, I invited a lot of European women to those chapter meetings. And after that year ran out, I started a think tank for women. And I said, how exciting to make sustainable development the axis. Sustainability, in my opinion, as a more philosopher, I would say is the feminization of an economic model that the world is used to. It's about the environmental pillar and about the community pillar, the social pillar. So this entered the Constitution of Belgium on May the 5th, 1997. And you have to see, the turn of the century was a very interesting period. So the think tank created opportunities for business leaders from different sectors to meet each other and to create new initiatives. Then I understand the need to create empowerment for women. So I created, based on my interviews, thanks to that TV show, again, I reached many business leaders. The first Nobel Prize, for example, from Africa, Wangari Maathai. I interviewed her, but men, do not be too afraid by our power, because I asked Wangari Maathai, is it really the occupation of women to take on the sustainability pillar? And she said, no, Pamela, it is the affair of all people, because men have the X gene in the XY. So it is basically a call for all. The empowerment workshop that I created was called The Next Life. What if women release the inhibition to be all that she can be? What if women get the wind basically under their wings? The sky is basically the limit, the untapped potential. We can just draw a parallel within the natural resources. The valuation system is outdated, is incorrect. The same parallel can be applied to women. We have tremendous untapped potential to offer. Then I created another workshop, Become an Eco-Hero, Become an Eco-Leader, that was launched for Nokia in the US, went straight to Belgium, again, business clubs with women entrepreneurs. You can either develop sustainability from within the company or import it from an external source, placing additional women on board of directors' position. Which, by the way, according to Catalyst, a non-profit that helps place women on board position, about 3 women on a board is the sweet spot. From 3 women onwards, basically there is a comparative advantage and there's a financial value that gets added. From companies who have 3 women, the return on equity compared to the people who do not have boards increases by 53%. Return on sales increases by 42%. And the most surprising value, of course, is the return on invested capital. They're outperforming the ones with less women, the companies who have 3 or plus women on the board, by 66%. And so the new concept that I'm creating is not just for women, because men also need to be included, but it could be women who would take on that position. And it's a concept that I created called Eco-Genist. It's 3 parts, Eco, Gen, Ist. And I would like to invite many people here to do the exercise with me. I'm writing an article for the Harvard Business Review magazine on this purpose. And the definition of the concept is you were born to the generation to add and create positive value benefiting society and environment. That is so powerful. And I have yet to study how much percent of return on investment that will generate. So we will create a certificate. We'll hopefully be able to touch the 1,700 ladies that you already have seeked out as leaders. What will happen if we add that value system in companies where resources who normally go to waste get reintegrated in the value? I have a case study, for example, of a company that has normally spent millions of dollars in having the waste being dealt for them. Instead, they started to sell it off as natural resources, creating circular economies. They made millions. So from spending millions, they made millions. My husband had a very interesting case to share with me. Columbia University, I went also to Columbia thanks to a professor where I developed the first TV show in 2001 on sustainable lifestyles, was just closing an entire department with news clippings, paper news clippings that dated from 1920. They said, my gosh, 100 years of paper clippings, what are we gonna do with that? Immediately, as a resource, I would say creation value person, I said they should have called artists. Included artists in the university, let's do a competition, who can make the most amazing art with that? It's about closing loops, it's about getting the energy cycles into a continuum. And so those are just a couple of the things I've done besides another.
Congratulations on all these great initiatives. Shifting the focus now to you, Dr. Moody, the Global Gender Gap report reveals that substantial pay gap exists worldwide. In the context of Saudi Arabia, how can organizations work towards narrowing this gap and ensuring equal pay for equal work?
Okay. Thank you for the question, because I think what a lot of people don't realize, before I answer that question, let me differentiate between the government sector and the private sector when I talk about wage gap between genders. What a lot of people don't realize is that in Saudi Arabia, we never had a gender wage gap in the government sector. Women and men entered the workforce with equal pay in education, in medicine, which was the two fields mainly that women started in. So myself, as a university professor, I made exactly the same as my male peer. My female friends who were doctors made exactly the same as their male peers. Now, once women started entering in the private sector, that gap emerged and grew, honestly, despite the fact that in legislation and law, there exists a law that says equal pay for equal work. So what happened was that at one stage, I believe it was in 2017 or 18, there was a study by the King Khalid Foundation which found that men made almost 300% more than women in the private sector. So we decided in the Shura Council to tackle this. Legislation was there, but implementation was not. So we advised that there should be some sort of monitoring of the implementation of that law. In addition to public awareness, women going into the private sector should be aware of their rights and highlight them to their employers if they haven't seen them, so to speak. And then, of course, the government monitoring of contracts, titles, and pay, which worked very well. Final note on that is that getting women in the workforce might be easier than retaining them. So inside the wage gap, I would say there are pretty good incentives for Saudi women as mothers and parents to stay in the workforce. We have a minimum of 2 months paid leave, which is excellent. You also have reduced hours for new mothers, up to 2 years. And you can also take a leave of 2 years and still guarantee to come back to your job, which I think worldwide is pretty rare.
Thank you. Diana, addressing the industry-specific challenges, we delve into strategies for empowering women in sectors with pronounced gender disparities. What initiatives can organizations adopt in heavy asset industries, aviation, energy, to promote gender equality?
So I think when it comes to what an organizational can do, it's a little bit like the change management matrix that we've been hearing about this morning, this is something that is a critical piece of strategy. And so it's really about making sure that we are very clear on our KPIs, first of all, thinking about how this trickles down into the rest of the business. To do that, typically, when we work with a corporate, so we normally work with very, very large-scale corporates, typically the flag bearer in the industry. It's often the first step is creating those sort of benchmarks and understanding where do we sit compared to everybody else, and then looking at what can be done to actually shift the areas that we want to address first. Every company is a little bit different with that. But it is something that there are very typical things that come up every single time. So we've talked a little bit about inclusion today as well. This is where I think there's the biggest amount of change that needs to actually shift. In terms of the initiatives that we can kind of help bring to the table, they are typically what we would call an equity initiative. So when we talk about creating career pathways, we do have to look at whether or not the pathways exist for the people that we're trying to actually empower. And sometimes they don't, so we have to look at creating those bridges or those equity programs. So we would say that instead of giving everybody a shoe, make sure you give somebody a shoe that fits. And this is really one of the ways that we look at it from a strategic perspective to say, okay, how do we move these organizations forward to achieving their KPIs is by developing those initiatives to actually make sure that they succeed. So it's the same as before, strategy, execution, making sure that that happens. What I think is really exciting and gives us an opportunity is actually with everybody looking at AI, is that it provides a really visual tool for us to understand how our biases are actually sneaking into technology as well. So something I would like to share today with everybody is an initiative called Fixing the Bias, which is spelled BAIS instead, which provides you with a really visual representation of what AI actually thinks a CEO looks like or an investor looks like. And you won't be surprised to know that 97% of the time, it shows a man. That tells us we've got an awfully long way to go and a lot of work to do.
Thank you. Taghreed, building inclusive workplace is imperative. What action steps can organizations take to foster an environment where we feel supported and included in decision-making process?
Again, I would like to use the same model, which is starting with the government, society, and organizational. One thing I would refer to is based on the Women Women Peace Index. UAE is ranked 22 across 170 countries in political and financial power for women. I have a daughter she's 17 years old, applying for university. She was asking me if I want to become an ambassador or minister, what do I have to do? What do I have to study? Just by asking this question, you feel the shift in terms of career options. For specific initiatives in organization, again, Miral have initiated different initiatives. One of it is Maharati program, which is attracting a graduate who graduated but did not find a job for 2 years. They joined the program for 2 years, and they're not obliged to stay. They can even search for other jobs or maybe internalized within the group. There's also the ambassador program, which is attracting youth, and there is a high percentage of females participating in this program to encourage females to go to the tourism and entertainment sector, which is something very new. Again, in this decision process, there is different aspects to become. One is the law, and I mentioned being part of the board, but also from an organizational level, how to make it part of the policy to embed females in the decision making in a different level.
Thank you. Concluding our insightful discussion, we explore the pivotal role of mentorship programs in fostering the professional growth of women, Dr. Moody and Pamela, I would like to get your insights. What is the importance of mentorship in your opinion, and how can organization ensure equal access to opportunities for skill development and career growth?
Well, thank you for this question. I think first and foremost, there are different types of people. Not everybody can become a leader. When I did my first master's in economics or applied economic sciences, eco-psychology was very interesting to me. There are three types of people in the workforce. One, it's the person who only lives for the job, basically has no family life. Two, the one who blends balanced family and corporate life. Three, the job is just a paycheck, minimal investment. So mentoring first needs to be a search for the right person, because leadership is not just a position, it's actually something that would rely also on accountability, it's responsibility. You know, you become a person that people look into. So you have to become an example, or at least that's supposed to be what good leadership is about. Mentorship is actually something that we naturally gravitate to. We all have mentors in our lives. It just depends whose wisdom you incorporate. My first mentor was my grandfather, happily married, in love with his wife. She was in love with him. It's just the ideal world. Very important historic person in Belgium, with great feeling for family, on board positions. So if that's already part of your family, it becomes a part of your DNA. You don't think that you should do anything less than that. Mentoring was for me so important when I became that president of the Business and Professional Women's Club. And when I had that think tank that I managed, I said, wow, the information that is passing around, the value that these women create together, again, coming from that media, that TV show, I said, this is a TV show. And I came up with the concept, monitoring, mentoring. And I had another privileged interview with the #1 of Time magazine, who created a mentorship program through that level. And they had invited corporate women from all around the world to come to headquarters, and they placed them within American companies, basically to facilitate already bilateral trade expansion, but also cultural trade expansion, which I think is very important for this nation. You have to come to Saudi to feel the people, to enjoy the hospitality and the very broad mindsets. And so I think for a recommendation for Saudi is absolutely to tap into the power of media. That's why I left my country behind. Of course, I came back with gifts because I came back enriched. And so I hope that that would be absolutely one of the topics that Saudi would envision, because education is at the cornerstone of your development. I think more than 50% is under 25 years old. And it's brilliant to allow that educational pillar to also already come into the lives of women at a young age.
Thank you so much. Dr. Moody?
Thank you. Building up on 2 points that you said, monitoring, mentoring. Now, mentorship is important, I believe, for both men and women equally. By the way, there's an excellent nonprofit program called Project 1932, if you haven't heard about it, bringing in big sibs, little sibs. As for Saudi women in particular, I think the challenge lies in the experience gap between women of 20 years ago and today. What we went through, and I'm of the older generation, is different from what the younger generation is going through. My son once came to me and said he was complaining about his female colleague being promoted faster than he was, although he thought he was better. So he goes up to his boss, who is also a female, and asks her, will my gender hold me back? Now, that saddened me as a mother, but it also gave me a glimpse into what was happening in this country. I explained to him it's not discrimination against you, it's affirmative action for her, it's the stage where we are, and whatnot. But it also shed light on the challenge that Saudi female mentors will have today when they mentor a generation living completely different times, than they are today. So we should keep that in mind as mentors and as mentees as well when you come or you're matched with a Saudi mentor that lived experiences different than yours. As far as the second point, which is education and upskilling and development, I think as a government, one of our priorities is developing human capital. 2021, the Human Capital Development Fund was started, and the chairperson is our Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Next month, I believe, the end of next month, they have their first conference, the Human Capital Initiative, bringing in experts from all over the world on how to develop human capital. And we're out of time. All right, so that's it for me.
Thank you. Now, ladies, I would like to put your leadership skills in terms of time management to the test. So I need, in 30 seconds, 2 points. One is one takeaway that we men and women going to go home and tomorrow we're gonna implement and promise. And two, what can organization like HBS do to further empower women? So can I start with you, Diana? 30 seconds.
So one huge takeaway, and it's kind of linked to what Pamela was talking about earlier on, is that when we actually work collaboratively together as both men and women, what actually happens, the reason why we get this effect in the boardrooms is because we ask different questions. It's really important that we shift this narrative of sort of men or females being better than each other and realize that actually the sweet spot is in us working collaboratively together. And that's where we get all the innovation and the extra profit from. So the one takeaway that I'd like to give for a corporate or for a leader in this room in terms of how you make a difference in your company is you ask for the data. Ask for the data, understand the problem, and then put that strategy and execution plan in.
Thank you. Taghreed, 29 seconds.
I would like to summarize the discussion based on Stephen Bullitt, the author of the Journal of CEO, where he pointed 5 points. One is knowledge, skill, network, resources, and reputation. So for women, education is number one. And second is skill, which is putting your knowledge into practice. Networking is where you connect, and it's also covering mentorship and connection. Resources is to empower with the financial resource and the right resource, and building the reputation, all bundled with the government policy, with the society and shifting mindset, and the organizational policy.
Thank you. Dr. Moody.
Okay, briefly, my message and takeaway, I would like the young ladies, because I focused on Saudi Arabia for the first part, and I'm in the world's largest female university. So my message to the young ladies today living in an exceptional era under the guidance of King Salman and our young, ambitious Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is, please know that you're lucky. Don't take things for granted. Appreciate the former generation that worked hard to get where they are today, learn from them, and work just as hard, if not harder, to prove that you're not just a quota. You may have a table at the seat equally, but show them that you also bring value to the table. That's the message I give to the young ladies of today. And for the club, I would say keep getting women of the region, since it's GCC, Harvard, together to share experiences and learn from each other.
Thank you. Pamela.
Yes. My takeaway to the audience is I look very much forward to support your vision for 2030. It is an extremely powerful opportunity. And I look forward to support it with that new ecogenist concept, but also with my EcoHero program for youth. I'm also a certified National Geographic educator. I've been educating kids since 18 years. How can the Harvard Business Club contribute? Let's organize the first workshops here in the region and get the results and motivate the society for more leaders to contribute to a sustainable planet and a richer community.
Thank you so much for your timekeeping and great insights. It's been wonderful to have you all, an honor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your contribution. And let's keep on working towards a better impact.